Disclaimer: this story is inspired by true events, but has been dramatized for emotional and storytelling purposes. Names, places, and identifying details have been changed to maintain anonymity. The narrative includes themes of infidelity, emotional conflict, and betrayal. Viewer discretion is advised. This story is meant for mature audiences and aims to evoke awareness, not promote or glorify wrongdoing. It was a cold, rainy evening when everything began to shift. I had just finished setting the table for dinner when my husband, Eric, called out from the hallway. "Hey babe, look who's here," he said, his voice echoing with excitement. I turned around and saw Daniel, his old college friend. I hadn't seen him in nearly 5 years. He looked different, more rugged, with stubble on his chin and weariness in his eyes. Still, he smiled at me like we were long-lost friends. "Hey, Anna," Daniel said, stepping forward for a polite hug. I returned the gesture awkwardly, sensing something off. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, but there was a strange energy in the room. Eric explained that Daniel had missed his train and asked if he could crash at our place for the night. "Just one night," he said casually. "He's got an early bus tomorrow." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course. You're welcome here." Dinner went smoothly, but I couldn't ignore how Daniel kept looking at me. Not in a friendly or nostalgic way, it was something else. His eyes lingered a second too long. He laughed a little louder at my jokes. When Eric went to take a phone call during dinner, Daniel leaned closer and asked about my life, too personal, too intense. Later that evening, we set up the guest room for him. Eric, tired from work, went to bed early. I stayed up a bit longer, tidying up and replaying Daniel's strange expressions in my mind. I brushed it off as paranoia. Maybe I was imagining it. Around 11:30 p.m., I finally slipped into bed beside Eric. He was already asleep, peaceful and snoring softly. I stared at the ceiling in silence, trying to shake the unease creeping through me. That's when I heard footsteps. Light, cautious steps outside the bedroom door. I held my breath. Maybe he was just getting water, I thought. But my gut told me this night wouldn't end like any other. I never imagined that letting Daniel stay would lead to the night that would change my life forever. The following morning came with a strange heaviness in the air. I tried to go about my routine as if nothing had shifted the night before, but deep inside, I felt something wasn't right. Daniel sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee, acting as if everything was normal. "Morning," he said with a crooked smile. "Morning," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Eric was in the shower, and it was just the two of us in the kitchen. The awkward silence between us felt louder than any conversation. I busied myself with making eggs, trying not to make eye contact. "Sleep okay?" I asked, my back turned to him. "I did," Daniel said, pausing just long enough to make it uncomfortable. "Though, I heard someone walking around last night." I froze for a second. "Probably you," I answered casually, flipping the eggs. "Or maybe the house settling." "Maybe," he said quietly. When Eric entered the room, cheerful and oblivious, the tension seemed to fade instantly. Daniel turned back into the charming guest, cracking jokes and talking about old college memories. It was like watching him wear a mask, one only I could see through now. By noon, Eric offered to drive Daniel to the bus station. But a sudden change in plans kept Daniel in town for another night. He claimed there were no buses available until the morning. Eric, always the gracious host, insisted he stay again. I wanted to protest, but I didn't. I couldn't find the right words. It would sound silly. Suspicious even. After all, he hadn't done anything. Not yet. That evening, the three of us watched a movie. I sat on one end of the couch, Eric in the middle, Daniel on the other. But every time Eric leaned forward to grab a snack or change the volume, I felt Daniel's eyes on me. Not like before, now it was bolder, hungrier, as if he was challenging me silently. My heart pounded, not from fear but confusion. Was he really doing this? Was I imagining it? Could I even tell Eric without sounding paranoid? Later that night, Eric went to bed early again, complaining of a headache. I stayed up to wash the dishes. As I stood alone in the kitchen, I felt someone behind me. I turned around. It was Daniel. His voice was low. You're different now, not like before. There's something about you. I didn't respond. I just stared at him, trying to read his face. Was he flirting? Testing boundaries? Or just being creepy? He stepped closer. I instinctively backed away. "Good night, Daniel," I said firmly, turning off the lights. But as I climbed the stairs that night, I knew something was building. Something I wasn't ready to face. And it would come crashing down soon, sooner than I ever expected. The clock read 12:07 a.m. when I awoke with a start. I wasn't sure what had pulled me from sleep. Maybe it was the creaking floorboards, or the faint shuffle of feet outside the bedroom door. I lay there silently, my heart beating faster with every passing second. Beside me, Eric was fast asleep, breathing slow and steady, completely unaware of the storm brewing in our home. I slipped out of bed and opened the door gently, trying not to make a sound. The hallway was dimly lit by the nightlight at the far end. I thought I saw a shadow move. My breath caught in my throat. "Daniel?" I called out softly. And then he stepped into view. He wasn't wearing a shirt. Just a pair of joggers and bare feet. His expression wasn't sleepy or confused. It was intense, deliberate, like he had been waiting for this moment. "I couldn't sleep," he whispered, voice deep and slow. "You were on my mind." I stood frozen. "Go back to your room, Daniel." He didn't move. "I've thought about you for years, Anna. Even when Eric talked about you, I always wondered, what if you were mine?" My stomach twisted. I felt like the walls were closing in. "You need to stop," I said, louder this time. "This is wrong." He stepped closer, just inches away now. I could smell his cologne, familiar, musky, dangerous. His voice dropped even lower. "I see the way you look at me. You felt it too last night, didn't you?" I wanted to yell. I wanted to push him away. But I couldn't move. I hated myself in that moment, for the confusion I felt, for the fear, and for the curiosity I didn't want to admit was there. He reached out, brushing his fingers lightly down my arm. I flinched, breaking out of the trance. "Don't," I whispered, backing away. But then, it happened. He kissed me. Not forcefully, but like he knew he had already won. And for a single, stupid second, I didn't stop him. I pulled away abruptly, my mind spinning. "This can't happen," I gasped, shaking. He stared at me unfazed. It already did. I rushed back into the bedroom, heart pounding, ashamed and furious with myself. Eric stirred, but didn't wake. I slipped under the blanket, tears forming in my eyes. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, haunted by what had just taken place in the hallway outside our bedroom. The place where I thought I was safest had become the scene of my biggest mistake. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. I didn't sleep that night. Even as the early rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, I couldn't stop replaying the moment over and over again. Daniel's words. His touch. That kiss. My failure to stop it immediately. The silence around me was deafening, filled with guilt, confusion, and self-loathing. I turned my head and looked at Eric, still asleep beside me. Peaceful. Trusting. The man who had given me everything: his love, his loyalty, his home. And I had shattered that trust in a heartbeat. How could I? I rose quietly and went downstairs. Daniel was already in the kitchen, brewing coffee like nothing had happened. He glanced at me, his lips curving into a half-smile that made my skin crawl. "We should talk," he said casually, as if we had simply exchanged opinions last night, not crossed the most dangerous line. "There's nothing to talk about," I said flatly, pouring myself a glass of water just to have something to do with my shaking hands. "You didn't push me away," he said, stepping closer again. "That means something." I spun around, eyes wide with anger. It was a mistake. I was confused and caught off guard. "You kissed me, I didn't want it." He narrowed his eyes. "Didn't you?" My blood boiled. "You're a guest in my house. My husband's friend. And you took advantage of the situation." Daniel leaned back against the counter, unbothered. "You can lie to yourself, Anna. But I saw it in your eyes. You wanted something more." Before I could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Eric walked in, yawning and rubbing his eyes. He smiled at both of us like nothing was wrong. "Morning," he said cheerfully. "Morning," we echoed in unison, hiding our tension behind fake smiles. Eric walked over and kissed me on the forehead, then grabbed a mug of coffee. I fought hard not to cry. The rest of the day was a blur. Daniel left in the afternoon, claiming he finally had a bus to catch. He hugged Eric goodbye and then looked at me, no words, just a knowing glance that made my stomach twist. After he was gone, I collapsed on the living room floor and sobbed. The guilt was too heavy. I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and now the weight of that one moment threatened to crush me. I thought I could keep it buried, that maybe if I acted normal, it would fade. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. I wasn't the same woman Eric had kissed on the forehead that morning. Something inside me had broken, and the cracks were starting to show. I kept telling myself it was over. That Daniel was gone. That what happened could be locked away in a dark corner of my memory, never to be spoken of again. But the truth has a way of sticking to the soul, no matter how deep you try to bury it. The next morning, I woke up before Eric and just sat at the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall. My chest was tight. My throat felt sore, like I had been screaming in my sleep. Eric rolled over and smiled. "You okay, babe?" I nodded quickly. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well." He pulled me in for a hug. I stiffened, and he noticed. "You sure everything's all right?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. I forced a smile and nodded again. "Just tired." But everything inside me was screaming. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to cry in his arms and beg for forgiveness, but I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to destroy him like that. Downstairs, every room still smelled faintly of Daniel's cologne. His coffee cup was still in the sink. His blanket on the guest bed hadn't been folded. Traces of him were everywhere, and each one felt like a reminder of my guilt. I tried to go about the day like normal. Made breakfast. Washed clothes. Pretended. But I couldn't stop thinking about that kiss. About how easily he'd slipped into my life and turned it upside down. The most disturbing part? A tiny piece of me had enjoyed the attention. That thought alone made me feel sick. Eric was in the garage later that day when I noticed my phone buzz. A message from an unknown number. "You looked beautiful this morning. Miss me yet?" My blood ran cold. It was Daniel. I deleted the message instantly. My hands trembled as I dropped the phone onto the table. He wasn't done. He wasn't letting go. That night, I barely ate. Eric noticed, of course. "You've been acting strange since Daniel left," he said gently. "Did something happen?" I froze. My heart dropped. "No, I lied. I don't know. Maybe I'm just overwhelmed." He leaned in and kissed my forehead again. "You know you can talk to me, right? About anything." That was the moment I realized the depth of what I'd done. I had betrayed the one person who truly loved me, and now I was lying to his face, hiding behind tears and excuses. But Daniel wasn't going to stay silent. And deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. The days that followed were unbearable. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for Daniel to strike again, and he didn't disappoint. It started with more messages. "I miss your lips. Don't worry, your secret's safe, unless I change my mind. One more night, Anna. That's all I ask." I blocked his number. He created a new one. Then came the emails. One, in particular, made my blood run cold. It had a photo attachment. A grainy shot from what looked like a hidden phone camera, me and Daniel in the hallway. My hand on his chest. His face close to mine. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It was evidence. "You think Eric would enjoy this as much as I did," the message read. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I paced the bedroom while Eric watched TV downstairs, unaware that our marriage was hanging by a thread. Daniel had me cornered. It wasn't just blackmail. It was psychological torture. He knew I wouldn't confess. He knew I couldn't risk losing everything. And he used that silence to his advantage. 2 nights later, I heard a knock on the back door. It was nearly midnight. I looked through the window, and there he was. Daniel. Standing in the dark like a ghost refusing to stay buried. I cracked the door open just an inch. "What the hell are you doing here?" He smirked. "You blocked me." "I thought we were closer than that." "You need to leave before Eric sees you," I hissed. He leaned in, resting his hand on the frame. "I won't tell him." Not if you give me what I want. I froze. I want another night, he said calmly. Just one. No lies. No guilt. You want it too, I saw it in your eyes. I shook my head, trembling. You're insane. I have nothing to lose, Anna. But you do. Your marriage. Your reputation. One email to your husband, and it's all gone. Tears welled in my eyes. Please don't do this. He tilted his head. Then meet me tomorrow. Same hotel as before. There was no hotel. I snapped. He laughed softly. Yet? With that, he disappeared into the night like smoke. I shut the door and collapsed to the floor, shaking. I knew then I had two choices: let him control me, or risk everything by telling the truth. But either way, life as I knew it was already beginning to crumble. And I had no one to blame but myself. I couldn't breathe. For 3 days, I lived in complete fear. Every sound outside, every vibration on my phone, every glance from Eric filled me with panic. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't lie anymore. I was trapped in a prison I had built myself. That evening, Eric sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through his phone while a sitcom played in the background. I couldn't take it anymore. The laughter from the TV felt like mockery. My heart was beating so hard I thought it might stop. I need to talk to you, I said suddenly, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up at me surprised. What's wrong? I swallowed hard, my palms sweaty. My eyes brimmed with tears. It's about Daniel, I said. His face instantly changed. Serious. Alert. What about him? I stared down at my hands, twisting my wedding ring in circles. Something happened the night he stayed. Something I never intended. I never planned it. But it did. Eric's eyes narrowed. He didn't speak. I kissed him, I confessed. He kissed me first. I didn't stop it. I should've. I hate myself for it. Silence. The TV kept playing in the background, a canned laugh track echoing into the room as the air between us thickened. Eric blinked slowly. His jaw clenched. What, exactly, happened? He asked, his voice low and sharp. I told him everything, how Daniel had made comments, how he showed up outside our bedroom, how I didn't stop him when I should've. I left nothing out. I didn't even try to justify it. I just told the truth. Eric sat perfectly still, his face expressionless. Then he stood up. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He simply walked out of the room and into the kitchen, gripping the counter so hard his knuckles turned white. I trusted you, he finally said, his voice shaking. With everything. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I just couldn't let him control me anymore. Eric turned to face me, his eyes red. Control you? He's been threatening me, I whispered. Blackmailing me. He took a photo. He said he'd send it to you unless my voice broke. Unless I gave him more. He leaned back, stunned. What? I nodded, crying harder now. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I was so ashamed. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he walked past me, grabbed his keys from the counter, and opened the front door. Where are you going? I called out. I don't know, he said quietly. But I can't look at you right now. The door closed behind him. And just like that, my truth had shattered everything. The house was painfully silent after Eric left. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. No gentle footsteps echoing through the hallway. No humming from the kitchen. No voice calling me, babe. Just me and the weight of what I had done. I stayed on the couch that entire night, replaying every moment, every choice, every second I should have walked away but didn't. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. When the morning sun crept through the blinds, it didn't bring light, it only exposed the ruins of my choices. Eric didn't return that day. Or the next. Eventually, I packed a bag and moved in with my sister across town. I told her everything. She didn't judge me, she just listened. Her quiet presence was the only thing that kept me from falling apart completely. A week passed. Then 2. No word from Eric. I had texted, called, emailed, but silence became his only answer. I didn't blame him. How could I? Then, one rainy afternoon, as I sat by my sister's window watching water slide down the glass, I heard the mailbox click. A letter. Handwritten. From Eric. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was only a single page. His handwriting familiar and raw. Anna, I've spent the last few weeks asking myself where we went wrong. The truth is, we didn't go wrong overnight. Maybe I didn't notice how distant we'd become. Maybe you didn't realize how lonely you felt. That doesn't excuse what happened, but it helps me understand it. You hurt me. Deeply. But I can't ignore what you did next. You told me the truth when it would have been easier to lie. You faced it when most people would have buried it. I don't know if I can forgive you right now. But I also don't know if I can live the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I tried. So, let's take space. Let time do what it does. Maybe we'll find our way back. Or maybe we won't. But either way, I want you to heal, and I need to heal too. Please don't contact me for a while. With everything, Eric, I held the letter to my chest and wept. Not because he forgave me, but because I didn't deserve even that much grace. The pain didn't disappear. The shame didn't fade. But in that moment, I realized healing wasn't about forgetting what I'd done. It was about learning to carry it differently. Maybe Eric and I would never be the same again. Maybe we'd never find our way back. But I knew one thing for certain. That one night changed everything. And I would spend the rest of my life trying to be someone better than the woman I was that night. 86.